The most powerful empire on Earth. Battle-hardened soldiers. Veterans who helped defeat Napoleon himself. And they were marching straight toward the heart of American democracy. The President of the United States was running for his life. And the only thing standing between America and total humiliation were a 15-year-old enslaved boy, a woman who refused to panic, and a man who stepped in front of a loaded cannon. This is the night that almost ended America. By 1814, Britain was furious, and it had every reason to be. America had declared war on Britain in 1812, then pushed north into British-held Canada, burning towns, looting settlements, torching the provincial capital of York. But America made one catastrophic miscalculation. Britain was distracted by Napoleon, and in the spring of 1814, Napoleon fell. Suddenly, the greatest military force on the planet had nothing to do, and it turned its full attention toward America. The man who saw the opportunity was Rear Admiral George Cockburn, a name that would become a curse word in American newspapers. He had been patrolling the Chesapeake Bay for a year, watching, studying, calculating, and what he found was extraordinary. The American defenses were almost non-existent. He wrote to his superior with chilling confidence. Several major cities were vulnerable. Washington itself, he predicted, could easily be at our mercy within a short period of time. He recommended Washington specifically, not for military value, but for what destroying it would mean. The political effect, he wrote, would be greater there than anywhere else. On July 18th, the orders came down. Destroy and lay waste such towns and districts as you may find assailable. The trap was set. Even among the British, there were doubts.
Major General Robert Ross, the officer tasked with leading the assault, thought the plan bordered on madness. March 4,500 men 50 miles inland, no cavalry, barely any artillery, into an enemy capital? He never dreamt for 1 minute it could actually work. But the fleet sailed anyway, and on August 24, 1814, after crushing American forces at the Battle of Bladensburg, in a rout so embarrassing it was later called the Bladensburg Races, the British Army stood at the gates of Washington. President James Madison had ridden out personally to watch the American defense hold. Instead, he watched it collapse. He turned his horse around and fled, a sitting president abandoning his capital. By evening, the city belonged to Britain. But here is what most people don't know about what happened next.
Ross entered the city under a flag of truce. He was, by all accounts, a disciplined officer. He planned an orderly occupation, targeting only public buildings, sparing private homes, sparing civilians. No unnecessary destruction. Then, American soldiers, still hiding in the city, opened fire. They shot Ross's horse out from under him. 2 of his men fell dead. The general, who had never wanted to burn anything, gave the order. The capital was first. The British sacked it before they burned it, looting documents, furniture, anything of value. Rear Admiral Cockburn personally took a government ledger from the president's room, inscribed his name in it as a trophy, and sent it home to his brother in Bermuda. It sat there for over a century before being returned to America in 1940. Then came the fire. The wooden floors, the ceilings, the glass skylights, all of it consumed. 3,000 volumes of the Library of Congress turned to ash. $12 million of destruction in today's terms. The capital was a gutted shell. The British turned northwest, up Pennsylvania Avenue, toward the White House.
This is where the story gets remarkable. First Lady Dolley Madison was still inside. President Madison had already fled, sending word for her to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. And yet Dolley didn't simply run. She organized the staff to save what they could. Documents, silver, valuables. The famous story is that she heroically cut the iconic portrait of George Washington from its frame and carried it to safety herself. That story is not true. And we know this because of a 15-year-old boy named Paul Jennings. Jennings was James Madison's enslaved personal attendant. He was there for every moment of that night. Decades later, after buying his own freedom, he published his memoir. The first ever written from inside the White House, he set the record straight. Dolley had no time to cut anything from any frame. It would have required a ladder.
Keep it steady.
The portrait was
Watch your
taken
step.
down and carried off
Hurry,
on a
Dolley.
wagon by the
Go.
French doorkeeper
Almost
and the
there.
president's gardener. But Jennings also recorded something almost impossible to believe. When the British soldiers entered the White House, they found a dinner table fully set. Wine poured, food prepared. Madison had been so certain the British would be captured that he had ordered a victory feast. The British commander sat down, ate the president's dinner, drank his wine. Then, they burned the house to the ground.
Across the city, the destruction continued. The Treasury, the Department of War, the Navy Yard, all burning. But one building survived, and the story of how is the most extraordinary moment of the entire night. When British soldiers approached the patent office, they aimed a cannon at it. William Thornton, the former architect of the Capitol, stepped directly in front of the gun. He demanded they stop. Are you Englishmen or Goths and Vandals? This is the patent office, a depository of the ingenuity of the American nation. Would you destroy it, fire away, and let the charge pass through my body? The soldiers lowered the cannon. They walked away. When the smoke cleared, the patent office was the only government building in Washington left standing. One man in front of one gun had saved it, and then the sky broke open.
Less than 26 hours into the occupation, a violent storm, possibly a hurricane, slammed into Washington with almost supernatural timing. The rains extinguished fires the British had spent hours setting, and then the storm spawned a tornado that tore directly through the center of the occupied capital, lifted 2 British cannons into the air, dropped them yards away, and killed soldiers on both sides. The British, veterans of European battlefields, were shaken. They returned to their ships. The occupation was over. 26 hours. That's all it lasted.
The angle here
Washington
needs
was
adjustment.
rebuilt.
Yes, but
the
the stress
capital
must be
took 12
supported.
years.
Exactly. Place
The
it
White
firmly,
House was
and the dome
reconstructed
will hold for
stone by
centuries.
scorched
Consider it
stone.
done, sir.
Congress voted 83 to 54 to stay in Washington rather than abandon it entirely. And in a twist nobody predicted, the rebuilding attracted investment, development, and growth. The city expanded. The destruction became the foundation of something stronger. Paul Jennings eventually bought his freedom and lived as a free man. The portrait he helped save still hangs in the White House today. In 2009, a dozen of his descendants stood in front of that painting at a White House ceremony held in their ancestors' honor. Major General Ross, the reluctant commander who never believed the mission was possible, was killed by American sharpshooters weeks later during the attack on Baltimore. Cut down before the battle even truly started, and the White House, the Capitol, the city along the Potomac, all of it stands today on the ashes of August 24, 1814. The British burned Washington to prove that America was too fragile to survive.
Instead, they built it. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe this channel and press the bell icon.